How do fighters even survive these kinds of hits? What goes through their minds right before impact? And which knockout is the craziest of them all? Some knockouts are so brutal that you wonder how the fighter on the receiving end even got back up. Today, we're breaking down the science behind those jaw-dropping UFC knockouts and the split-second moments that leave both fans and fighters in shock. Whether it's an underdog landing a perfect shot or a last-second Hail Mary punch, we're reliving the moments that no one saw coming. You'll see how fights that seemed like sure losses turned into legendary victories in the blink of an eye. Some of these were strategic, others were sheer luck, but they all ended with a shocking, unforgettable finish. Stick around, because the last knockout on this list is something you have to see to believe. The beauty of UFC lies in its unpredictability. 1 second, a fighter is dominating, pressing forward, landing clean shots, and the next, boom. They're flat on their back, completely unconscious. Knockouts can happen in an instant, completely changing the course of a fight, a career, and even UFC history. These moments are what make MMA so electrifying. No lead is ever safe, and no fighter is untouchable. It's why fans stay glued to the action, knowing that at any second, the fight could be over. What makes these knockouts even crazier is how impossible they are to predict. You can study fight tape, analyze striking accuracy, and even look at a fighter's durability, but none of that guarantees how a fight will play out. Some of the toughest, most skilled fighters in the world have been caught by a single punch or kick that they never saw coming. Sometimes, all it takes is one mistake, dropping your hands for a split second, leaning into a strike, or misjudging distance. And when that happens, lights out. It's these moments that make the UFC so thrilling. We've seen shocking one-punch KOs, devastating head kicks, and spinning strikes that seem like something out of a video game. Some fighters get back up and shake it off, others stay down for minutes, needing medical attention before they even realize what happened. Whether it's a last-second Hail Mary strike or a perfectly executed game plan, these knockouts remind us just how unpredictable this sport truly is. And trust me, you don't want to miss these. The first knockout on our list is one that had the entire arena in stunned silence before the crowd erupted in absolute chaos. Number 10, Rashad Evans versus Chuck Liddell. After winning 6 of his last 7 fights, light heavyweight Rashad Evans was ready to take on his greatest challenge yet, in the form of legend and former champion Chuck Liddell. It was the perfect opportunity to catapult himself into title contention, and Suga made the most of it. During an exchange in the second round, Evans threw an overhead right, and it connected perfectly on Liddell's chin. Everyone, including Evans, was in shock. The performance proved he was the real deal and more than just a wrestler, subsequently earning a title shot and eventually claiming UFC gold against Forrest Griffin. Number 9, Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. Several iconic head kick knockouts have been dubbed the kick heard around the world. This one earns that name with good reason. For UFC 193, the general public expected that bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey would steamroll through her opponent, Holly Holm. Instead, Holm shocked the world, stunning Rousey with a punch, followed by a head kick that knocked her out cold in the second round. With this highlight reel knockout, Holm pulled off one of the greatest upsets in MMA history to capture UFC gold. Number 8, Lyoto Machida versus Vitor Belfort. The Dragon has a collection of incredible knockouts, but this one might take the cake. Facing Vitor Belfort at UFC 224, Machida hit him with a quick and lethal front kick in the second round. Belfort instantly hit the ground and was out, before he even knew what hit him. You know, a knockout is so devastating when the person who hit it bows down and prays in front of the person who received it. But let's not forget, this wasn't the first time he pulled off a front kick knockout. Number 7, Gabriel Gonzaga versus Mirko Cro Cop. Heavyweight Mirko Cro Cop was famous for his kicks, so much so that a phrase, right kick hospital, left kick cemetery, was coined to describe his style. Unfortunately, he was on the receiving end of a devastating kick from his opponent, Gabriel Gonzaga, at UFC 70. In the very first round, Gonzaga hit Cro Cop with a head kick, and he hit the floor like a rag doll. While it was already determined that the winner would face then heavyweight champion Randy Couture, Gonzaga couldn't have done a better job showing why he deserved a title shot. Number 6, Joaquin Buckley vs. Impa Kasanganay. At this UFC fight night, Joaquin Buckley pulled off something straight out of an action movie and caught a kick from Impa Kasanganay, only to return the favor in the craziest way possible. The back kick broke the internet, and Buckley put himself on notice, cementing himself as one of the UFC's most exciting new prospects. To no one's surprise, it earned him an accolade for the UFC's Knockout of the Year. We'd be hard-pressed to see a knockout as wonderfully executed as this in the next few years. Number 5. Conor McGregor vs. Jose Aldo. Arguably one of the biggest and most highly promoted bouts in UFC history, Irish superstar Conor McGregor was ready to take on Jose Aldo to become the undisputed UFC featherweight champion of the world. Despite months of build-up and anticipation, it didn't take McGregor too long to dismantle the Brazilian. In just 13 seconds, McGregor knocked out Aldo by way of a vicious left hook that hit him right on the chin. It was the fastest knockout in a UFC title fight, and it further cemented McGregor's claim as one of, if not the biggest star on the UFC roster. Number 4. Francis Ngannou vs. Alistair Overeem. No one expected this bout to go the distance, and rightfully so. At UFC 218, Francis Ngannou cemented his place as one of the UFC's greatest knockout artists by landing this devastating uppercut on Alistair Overeem. The latter's head practically bounced, and as he fell to the ground, Ngannou landed another vicious shot for good measure. While Overeem later described the knockout as the uppercut from hell, it's been widely credited as what catapulted Ngannou into superstardom and made him one of the UFC's most popular fighters. Number 3. Jorge Masvidal vs. Ben Askren. The fastest knockout in UFC history, Jorge Masvidal demolished Ben Askren with this flying knee. Askren wanted to go for the takedown immediately and paid for it dearly. The subsequent celebrations by Masvidal were also noteworthy, but there was a reason behind it all. Askren had a fair bit to say about Masvidal prior to the fight, so the lesson here everyone can take away is this: tread lightly if you trash talk Jorge Masvidal. Things might not go your way. Number 2. Edson Barboza vs. Terry Etim. Now this one looks like it came straight out of a video game. At UFC 142, Edson Barboza had kicked the living daylights out of Terry Etim. He was unconscious before he even hit the floor, and Barboza didn't even bother to pursue him to land additional strikes. Landing the first ever spinning wheel kick knockout, Barboza had officially arrived in the UFC and stake. Number 1. Dan Henderson vs. Michael Bisping. In the second round of this fight, Dan Henderson landed an incredibly well-timed overhand on Michael Bisping's chin. Bisping frequently taunted Henderson prior to their fight, most notably during their stint as coaches on The Ultimate Fighter, so one can't help think there was some motivation and pent-up aggression was put into that shot. Henderson's signature punch, often labeled as the H-bomb, was so hard Bisping couldn't even remember being hit. With precision, timing, speed, and power, Henderson was able to land the ultimate shot on his rival. And there you have it. Some of the most jaw-dropping, game-changing knockouts in UFC history. From Rashad Evans' shocking Chuck Liddell to Dan Henderson's legendary H-bomb on Michael Bisping, these moments remind us why we love this sport. In just 1 second, everything can change. Fighters train for months, sometimes years, but all it takes is one perfectly timed strike to create a moment that will be replayed forever. What makes these knockouts so special isn't just the power behind them, it's the story. Whether it's an underdog pulling off the impossible, a heated rivalry coming to an end, or a fighter making a name for themselves in spectacular fashion, every knockout has an impact that goes beyond just that one night. Some cemented legacies, others ended careers, and a few even changed the landscape of the UFC forever. But if we've learned anything from this list, it's that the next great knockout is always right around the corner. Who will deliver the next highlight reel moment? Which fighter will shock the world next? Make sure to stay tuned, because in the UFC, history is made in an instant, and you never know when the next knockout of the year will happen.